Hey everybody, Michael Snyder here, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is April 9th. Happy Easter out there to everybody across the region. Taking a look here on the mid-level water vapor loop, you can see the atmospheric river impacting the Pacific Northwest. Couple pretty rainy days here going on across the region. We'll take a look at these details here as this low pressure center is also spinning up towards western BC, and that's kicking up some winds across the northwest interior and western BC as we speak. We'll take a look at those details. We'll take a look at the extended forecast as well, as we've got upper level trough that's going to settle down over the region here, and then potentially we might bounce back in our temperatures as we go towards the end of the week, towards next week, and we'll look at that towards the end of the video. Looking at a cross section of an atmospheric river, these go about 10,000 feet up, and you'd be looking from west to east here towards the west coast of North America, and you can kind of see how these would get wrung out as these run into our big terrain features out there. They dry out quite a bit by the time they get to the leeward side of the mountain ranges here. So nice cross section here. I always like to show that and give everybody an idea of why we have such stark rain shadows here across Pacific Northwest. Looking at SeaTac yesterday, 51 degrees, 7 degrees below average, 0.15 of an inch of rain. But as we bounce back towards next weekend, maybe we'll start to get above the average temperatures here coming up here. Makes you a little bit jealous. Look at some of these past record highs here. As you can see, some of these up into the 80s. Look at 2016. We had 89 and 84 in back-to-back days. And actually, the third day was 81 there as well. So if you want some warm weather, cross your fingers here that we get something here by the time the next weekend rolls around. Now, looking at current hazards, we have these wind advisory across northwest interior, western Whatcom and Skagit County. You've got some wind advisories all the way down the Washington coast, including Westport and Ocean Shores, but it might get blustery here across the Puget Sound as we go through the late morning, early afternoon hours. We'll take a look at that here coming up in a minute. Day 1 excessive rainfall outlook, Washington, Oregon coast. Does include the Cascades now, and this is for tomorrow down the Oregon coast, including northeast Washington and the Idaho Panhandle. Now we're looking at the NAM 3KM. This is hot off the presses. You see that frontal system move across the area. Atmospheric river sags south, but then we get a little bit of low developing here that's going to push that band of precip back north into western Washington during the day Monday before that system finally kicks off to the east as we go through the day Tuesday, and then that chilly upper level low starts to come down across the area here. We'll go over some more impacts of that on tomorrow's forecast. Here we're looking at last night's European run, and you can see this plume of moisture moving into the Pacific Northwest. Nice visual diagram here of the atmospheric river extending all the way back towards Hawaii, and you can see that this kind of bounces back north as we go on in through the day Monday before that frontal system kicks through, and then that upper level trough sets up shop over the top of us here, and then potentially we start to warm up towards next week, and more on that here in a moment. This is looking at total precipitation, European, put it into motion, and you can see a pretty rainy day across western Washington today, sag south across Oregon overnight tonight, western BC getting hammered, especially across some of the higher terrain. You can clearly see that atmospheric river feature there pointed at the Oregon-Washington coastline. And then as we go on in through Tuesday morning, some of that precip building up across northeast Washington, Idaho Panhandle before that system finally kicks off to the east. But look at this, Seattle over 2 inches, Portland over 2, big amounts across some of the coastal range. And you can see the stark rain shadow effect here of the Cascade Mountains. Not much precipitation makes it over the mountains here, at least on the immediate leeward side of the Cascades during these events. Now here we go. This is the wind maker for today. The low pressure system moving into western BC, 981 millibar low, strong gradient with it. And we'll look at some of these wind speeds here across the Puget Sound here in a moment, potentially. And then you can see why this band bounces back north across the area here. You get a little bit of a low pressure system development across the region there before it finally kicks off to the east here by the time you get into Wednesday morning. Now we're looking at the NAM 3KM, accumulated max 10-meter wind gusts. We've already got some gusty winds going across Whidbey Island, some of the San Juans, extreme western portions of Skagit, Whatcom County up into western BC. Go through the morning into early afternoon. You can see these winds pick up across some of the Puget Sound as well. Look at that, showing 45 on the most recent NAM. Some gusts up over 50 miles per hour across the Washington coastline, immediately on the Oregon coastline as well. Some of the higher terrain getting some good gusts. Strait of Georgia up there, Vancouver Island. Not a bad little wind maker here, at least for April anyway. Now here we go for Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Somewhere around an inch in a 24-hour period ending there by Tuesday morning. This is for Quileute, probably up over an inch there in a 24-hour period here, ending probably tonight. And this is Tillamook. Look at this. Up over 2 inches here on the control run. Pretty rainy period coming up here, ending late Monday morning. This is looking at Tillamook Airport run by run. You kind of see it picked up on this atmospheric river, the higher precipitation totals here, about April 4th during the afternoon. And it kind of stuck with this, downtrended a little bit, and then it bounced back here on yesterday afternoon's run. So could get up over 1.5 inches of rain in a 24-hour period there for Tillamook. This is Bend, Oregon here. Generally less than 0.2 of an inch expected, kind of showing you the stark difference in a rain shadow area there over in Bend, Oregon. This is Quileute. Probably some gusts up towards 50 miles per hour can be expected late morning, early afternoon today. This is Whidbey Island. I wouldn't be surprised to see some 50-mile-per-hour gusts out there as well. Look at Friday Harbor, though. In the European, all the ensembles up into the mid-50s here. Some gusts up into the upper 50s showing up there on the European members. This is looking at Bellingham, some gusts up to 50. I would not be shocked to see. This is Astoria, a little less blustery here. The further south you go along the Oregon coastline, this is nothing out of the ordinary for the Oregon coast. This is the HRRR 3KM. Since we had some strong gusts showing up on the NAM 3KM, let's look at the HRRR high resolution rapid refresh. And look at that, Seattle 44, Olympia 43. You can start to get some nuisance power outages. Those wind speeds are nothing to sneeze at. Those are some pretty strong winds across the Puget Sound there. But look as you go further north, showing Bellingham up towards 57. Yeah, some pretty good gusts associated in there. And this goes all the way down the Washington coast towards the Oregon coastline as well. Cape Disappointment there, Astoria. Yeah, so we'll see how this goes. And you can see some of the higher terrain being favored for those higher gusts as well. Now looking a little bit off into the extended forecast. This is for next weekend, and you can see the ensemble runs here as of yesterday afternoon. It's kind of showing a warmer period here, maybe at least for a couple days as we go through Saturday, Sunday. We'll see how this works out. No promises just yet. As you can see, we have a long way to go. And I'll show you why this is kind of a low confidence forecast, even though the ensembles are showing the warm-up. I want to caution against it. Just yet. I'll show you why here in a moment. But Seattle Tacoma kind of showing that potential for that warm up next weekend. Spokane, upper level trough here, then the potential for a bounce back again. Now, this is looking at 18,000 feet. And I'll show you why you want to use some caution with what's coming up next weekend. So we're looking at 500 millibars here. And here we go with the atmospheric river. Cold upper level trough there. Northwest flow. Then we get this troughing over the Gulf of Alaska, and this is what's kind of the signal for our warm-up as we go. This would be Saturday afternoon here, the first of the potential warm days coming up towards the end of next week and next weekend. But this trough is close by here, so you have to really take this forecast with a grain of salt. Any kind of march eastward here with this trough would really cut down into our temperatures, and that's kind of what happened with the last round, as we were not promised, but there was a few warm days forecast in the extended that we ended up not getting here. So just going to take that with a grain of salt. As you can see, a signal for some troughing here as we go on in through mid-April. This is looking at maximum individual wave height. Not a bad day for some wave watching out there. It's going to be pretty gusty, though. It's gusts up towards 50 miles per hour and some good wave action going on along the coastline. Don't turn your back on the ocean, folks. Then we get a break as we go through midweek here coming up across some of the Washington, Oregon, Vancouver Island coastlines. This is the 6 to 10 day probability outlook here, and you can see this is for April 14th through the 18th here. So we do have that signal, but, grain of salt. Use caution right now. We'll see how this trends over the next few days. 8 to 14 day here. You can see the signal for much of the west coming up here. But again, we'll watch to see how this trends. This is something I did yesterday. So this is the European forecast. If you look here, this is June 2019. And so this point here is where the forecast extends out in the red bars here. These ensemble members there kind of showing you what we're expecting as far as La Nina/El Nino. And this would be neutral conditions at 0. And once you start getting above 1, you're into moderate El Nino, and once you get below -1, you're in moderate La Nina here, and negative 0.5 would mean La Nina conditions, and positive 0.5 would mean El Nino conditions. So as we scroll through here, I'm just going to scroll through here a little bit here, and I'll show you what we're dealing with here. So if we look there, you can kind of see that the forecast was to stay in these neutral conditions, maybe slightly El Nino, but then you could see the actual verification of that forecast here, the actual observations. We dipped down into La Nina period by the time we went into later 2020. Now watch this forecast as we go. So here you can see for example, this one actually picked it up quite well. It does show it, it does show the warm up here in the ensemble members, and you can see how the actual observations really matched up quite well with that. This would be October 2020. But then it got kind of faked out a little bit here again. It thought maybe we were headed back towards El Nino or neutral conditions here, but we were stayed in La Nina here. So some of the ensemble members did catch that. You can kind of see it was on the lower envelope here. In October 2021, you can see it did project us to warm up into neutral conditions again, but we stayed in La Nina for another year. I mean, look at that. All the ensemble members missed that here on this January 2022 forecast. But then it's been doing better recently, and I'll show you what we mean here. So this was October 2022, and the ensemble members have been showing us climbing out of the La Nina conditions towards neutral, and it really caught that quite well here in the actual observations. You can see the November forecast was quite good. The December forecast has been quite good. The January spot on, February spot on as well. And you can start to see what the ensemble members say we're headed towards, as the most recent one here in April showing us headed towards actually quite a strong El Nino here. So yeah, it's going to be some interesting conditions here coming up for the Pacific Northwest. El Nino has big implications on us here in the Pacific Northwest. So you can probably bet there's a pretty high level of confidence right now that we are going to be above average here as we go on into 2024 here across Pacific Northwest. We might get a flip. We've been dealing with some pretty chilly late winter / springs here across Pacific Northwest, and that may be changing as we go on into next year. And if you guys want a home weather station, click on the link below. You get 10% off. I really like this weather station. Highly recommend it. It's a nice, affordable home option. And you can get a handheld version too that hooks wirelessly up to your phone. I like this little station very much here. So anyway, yeah, we're dealing with this atmospheric river here through April. We've got some windy conditions coming through as well. And then we're going to have that cold upper level trough here. Then we're going to try to build some ridging here over us in the extended. But again, take it with a grain of salt. We'll see how that trends over the next few days. And we'll try to pinpoint some of those temperatures we can expect towards the end of next week into next weekend. We'll also watch this upper level low a little bit in more detail tomorrow's forecast. You could end up getting some thunderstorms or some mountain snows with that upper level low as it comes down as well. So we'll take a look at that in a little more detail tomorrow. But anyway, hope you guys are having a good Easter out there. Click like and subscribe, and we'll do this again tomorrow, and I'll talk to you then.